What's going on, everybody? Been a minute since I did a video here, and I am sorry for being MIA like that. It's just sometimes I don't feel like I have anything to talk about. And because of that, I threw up a post in my group. If you're not familiar with my group, the link will be in the description, but it's just my name, Derek Michaud. Um, and kind of just threw it out there. Like, hey, what do y'all want me to talk about? And as I expected, I got a pile of comments from y'all, which is really cool. So I'm not going through all of them right now. I just saw one that kind of struck me, and I'm going to answer that question or talk about it. And someone asked about when I discovered music. So that's what I'll talk about. So when I was very young, growing up in my grandparents' house. My mom was a young parent, so if I'm 5 years old, that meant my mom was 22, somewhere around there. And I know you're watching mom and you're trying to do the math too, but we used to have an 8-track player. You remember those 8 tracks? 8-track players, and I used to listen to Sesame Street 8 tracks, which had some music and singing and everything, and that was fun. But I remember, not quite vividly, but there was three there's three bands or 8 tracks that I just always remember seeing and playing and putting the stuff in. It was Michael Jackson, not sure what album. May have been Off the Wall or something. Bee Gees, don't know what album. Probably Greatest Hits or Saturday Night Fever. And J Gall's band. And mom, as you're watching this, you're probably like, "What? I don't even remember having those 8 tracks." Those images have always stuck in my head. So I used to just play those just for the sake of playing 8 track tapes and just playing with the machine. But I kind of want to look back on that, you know, especially with the Michael Jackson and uh, Bee Gees. All these years later, as a bass player, that's my fun. That's my favorite music to play, and it's what is easiest for me. It's what I'm best at is playing disco funk bass. So maybe there's something to that. But when music really started getting important to me was when maybe I was 10, between 10 and 12. We used to do what was the Columbia House deals where you get like 8 cassettes for a penny, but then you have to subscribe and do these other things that you would never do, so you would just get a bunch of free cassettes. So I used to get a lot of oddball stuff. But it was when I discovered Def Leppard. Let me backtrack here. So this is a pinnacle moment that I forgot about. My mother bought me a Walkman at the Kmart in the Lilac Mall in Rochester, New Hampshire. And let's say I was 11, somewhere in there, 10, 11. And we need a cassette. It was, I didn't own a cassette to play. She's like, well, let's get a cassette. And what we ended up buying was Robert Palmer. The name of the album was Riptide, which had his big hits on it. I forget the name of the song. But the videos where he's got the ladies behind him dancing and everything, I can't think of those songs. But he had like 2 major hits on that album. And I wore that tape out. I wore it out. Used to have my Walkman on my belt, riding my bike, had little headphones, and it's just hilarious now. It's this and some wireless earbuds nowadays. But so that was like, okay, now I had my thing. I had a Walkman and a cassette. And it was mine. I enjoyed the music, and I could take it with me. Um, but when I really started getting lost in the music was when I would go on camping trips with my grandfather. Uh, my mother's sister, my Aunt Dolly, and her husband, my Uncle Ronnie, and their three children, my cousins Ronnie, Scott, and Wayne, camped a lot. They camped often to the point where they eventually built a camp up in northern Maine. Um, and my grandfather would go with them. My mom wasn't much of a camper. Let's just say that. So I would tag along. I would leave with my Pepe, and then we would go camping with my aunt and uncle and my three cousins. So there was a lot of driving in my grandfather's van to go to these different places, and I had my Walkman that my mom bought me. But by this time, don't know how, but I ended up discovering Def Leppard. It may have been my mom again when it came to the Columbia House cassette deals. She was probably like, "Ooh, I bet you'd like that album. I bet you'd like this one." I have a feeling that may have went down, but Def Leppard Hysteria, the album that Pour Some Sugar on Me is on, Animal, um, the whole album is just a collection of hits. Like every album, every song on that dang album was a hit. I listened to that cassette so much, I wore the lettering off the cassette. It was just clear plastic. There was zero writing or any kind of print on it. I listened to it that much. I was also listening to Motley Crue, Girls, 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 Europe, the song The Final Countdown. I listened to that a lot. And then I was also like into the Cocktail movie soundtrack. Um, and I had this weird period where I was listening to Belle Biv DeVoe and CNC Music Factory. So those early '90s kind of pop stuff. I was just listening to whatever is really in front of me. But that hard rock stuff is what stuck. And I know that because at this point, in my grandfather's van, heading to northern Maine to camp, Walkman at full volume, listening to hard rock, Leopard, Poison, Motley Crue, like I said, Europe, oh gosh, White Snake, all the hairband stuff, all the '80s stuff, I was all into. And this is when I started like daydreaming. This is where I honestly feel like I became a musician or attracted it in my life. Some people, call it a God moment or a universal law of attraction, whatever and however you want to frame that. But I would envision myself so vividly and so deeply as the singer on the stage. So I'd be listening to Poison and I'd be the singer. Fantasizing, I'm the singer, I'm cool, I'm a rock star. Guitar solo would kick in. Now I'm the guitar player. And all my friends are watching me and I'm super cool. I'm on this big stage, I'm a rock star, I'm the lead guitar player. Good drum part comes in, I'm the drummer. Right? And I would do that for the whole drive. Just lose myself, kind of just looking out the window. My poor grandfather was probably like, "Hey, want to talk about something?" He's probably bored, while I'm sure he could also hear the music coming from my headphones because I literally always listened to it at 10. That it never went less than 10. But what's funny about that story is never once did I ever fantasize being the bass player. In fact, I probably didn't even know what bass was, like a bass guitar. You know the singer, you know the lead guitar player, and you know the drummer. And bass player, what? So all these years later, I end up being a lifelong bass player. But that is really, when I look back on it, when the snake really bit me, is how I used to listen to the music so deeply. And just envisioning myself so much, I feel like that attracted it in my life. I really do. So when the time came that I started plucking around on the little guitar, my grandfather showed me a few chords, and then uh, around this time is when my cousin Ronnie, if you're watching this, Ronnie, love you, man. He got a guitar from the Sears Robot catalog. I believe it was a Court, right, Ronnie? It had like a distortion button built into the guitar. And then he got a little amp called the T-Power amp. I think it was like 10 watts or something stupid. And when you just blast all the knobs all the way to the right, you got distortion. And my mom was like, oh, well, are you going to want a guitar too? Yeah, of course. So I got a guitar. It was a Kansas. I don't know what brand it was. Kansas was on the headstock. Red body. And got the same amp as Ronnie. And that's when we started playing a lot of Metallica. And at this time, Nirvana and Green Day's out there. And it just clicked, clicked more for Ronnie. Ronnie, yes, I'm going to just say it right now, you were much better than me. It just came easier to him, and he was good at soloing, and it still is today. Like, he's an awesome guitar player. I was just fittingly, I guess, more into the rhythm. And so then here's the story of how I became a bass player. So Ronnie had a high school band. So I think we were 16 years old around this time. And he was in a little band in high school. He was actually a bass player for a minute in this band. And then he ended up playing guitar eventually, because that's honestly what he does best. And they were playing like pretty heavy music. Well, then what ended up happening was the bass player graduated, I believe, and they didn't have a bass player. I went to a different school, 30 minutes from him. Super jealous that I wasn't in a band like he was in a band. I had a close friend in town that had a bass amp, and I knew he would probably sell it to me if I asked. So that's when I told Ronnie. And I hope I'm remembering this correctly, Ronnie, if you're watching this. But I remember asking him, hey, if I get a bass guitar and bass amp, I could be your bass player. Talk to Mick. Right, Ronnie? Mick, the singer of the band, the leader of the band, the boss, the junior in high school. And let him know, hey, I'll be your bass player. I don't care. I'll play bass. And they said yes. And I bought the amp and guitar off my buddy. I still have that guitar. That amp is long gone. The bass is pretty much long gone. I have it, but it is not in good shape. There it is. And that's when I started playing bass. It wasn't until years later I actually figured out what being a bass player is. Still working on it. Obviously, you never figure it out, but I was not playing the bass like a bass guitar. I was busy and playing, just wasn't playing it like a bass guitar should be played in the rhythm of a song. But hey, that's when I got started, and it wasn't until, so I was 16, so that was probably 1994. And then into the early 2000s is when I was like, this is what I want to do, which then eventually led me to moving to Nashville in '05, and here we are. And still a bass player, and still an okay guitar player, and still can't play solos. I was never a lead guitar player. Just my hands are too big, I think. I don't know. But so yeah, I guess that's a long answer to the question. But when I discovered music, it was in the '80s. Now, timeline's screwed up. Let me backtrack a little bit to when I started playing Metallica with Ronnie, and Green Day and Nirvana came out. That was really impactful for me. Metallica, Black Album, of that generation. I knew about Metallica. but I think the old school stuff at the time was very foreign to me. It was a little extreme because I was listening to Def Leppard and Poison and Motley Crue and Whitesnake, and Metallica at that time was definitely extreme, not as mainstream. So to my brain and ears, I was just used to the popular stuff. Well, then the Black Album comes out, Enter Sandman comes out, and I've just started playing guitar and changed everything. Metallica changed everything. And then, like so many people, which is why Metallica really blew up. Not only was that album massive for them, 16 times platinum, selling millions and millions, still to this day, selling millions of copies. Not only did that make them huge, but a lot of people like myself were like, oh, Metallica's awesome. What's their old stuff like? And you start digging into their previous albums, which was the first album was Kill 'Em All, then it was Ride the Lightning, and then Master of Puppets, and then Injustice for All. And you quickly realize, oh, these guys are amazing. All their stuff is good, all the old stuff, and it just consumed me. Metallica became my favorite band to this day, and that's really when things changed for me. I was like, I found the guy too, James Hetfield, the rhythm guitarist, lead singer of Metallica. I don't have idols, but if I had one, it'd be him. But good times, and I remember going back to playing with Ronnie, how he was a little extra up a level than me. When he and I would attempt to play a Metallica song together, like say we were playing Wherever I May Roam, Enter Sandman, or one of the songs, he would be Kirk Hammett and play the lead stuff, and I'd be James Hetfield playing all the rhythm. On paper it makes sense, but I don't think it sounded like it made sense. But we tried. We had a good time doing it. So, but yeah, I would love in your comments. What was your music experience like? Who's your favorite band? That's a good question. There. What and who is your favorite band? Leave it in the comment section. That's it. Thanks again for all of the tips and ideas and topic ideas on the group post. I'm going to continue to, drink out of that pond and come up with ideas and things to talk about because of that post. So I appreciate y'all engaging with that. Until next time, talk to you later.